The hardest thing a man can do is realize that being needed and being wanted are two different things, and that he has spent his whole life confusing one for the other. For 30 years, I believed that if I just kept showing up, kept paying, kept fixing what was broken, that would count as love. But showing up means nothing to people who've already found someone else to show up with the checkbook already open. It took a downed power line, a stranded school bus, and a sheriff's department radio call for me to finally understand something my own father never got the chance to teach me. You don't earn your place in a family by being useful. You either belong or you're just being used until something better comes along. Welcome back to the channel, my friend. If you've ever poured everything you had into your kids only to watch them look right through you the second somebody richer walked in the door, you already know exactly what this story is going to feel like in your chest. Before I get into the night that changed everything for my son and me, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button, drop a like on this one, and tell me in the comments what state you're watching from tonight. I read every single comment, my friend, every one, and it's what keeps this channel alive. To understand what happened out on Route 22 that night, you have to understand a man named Earl Whitfield. Earl lives about 4 miles outside of town in a converted grain silo. He turned into a house back when nobody thought that was a normal thing to do. He's 76 years old, a widower, retired from the county extension office, where he spent almost 4 decades teaching farmers how to read soil and save their land from going bust. His knuckles are swollen up like walnuts from 4 decades of hard winters, but the man does not stop moving. Every week, without fail, Earl runs something he calls the Route 22 Relief Line, a little network of retired farmers, veterans, and a couple of long-haul truckers who keep an eye on the elderly folks scattered along the back roads between Millbrook and Caldwell County. When the power goes out, when a well pump dies in July, when somebody's propane runs low in February, Earl and his people show up before the county even knows there's a problem. He never charges a dime. He drives a beat-up Ford Bronco from the 80s with a plow rig welded onto the front that he built himself, and he wears the same faded barn coat winter after winter, patched at both elbows with mismatched canvas. Earl is the kind of man the world forgot how to make. My name is Robert Callahan. Everybody calls me Bobby, except my late mother, who called me Robert right up until the day she passed. And I suppose in my head, some part of me is still trying to make her proud. I'm 63 years old, and I've run a small electrical contracting business out of Millbrook for the better part of 35 years, residential wiring, panel upgrades, the occasional barn or shop build. I've spent my whole working life with burn marks on my forearms and grit under my fingernails that never quite comes out, even after a hot shower. If I'm being honest with you, my friend, my one real flaw has always been that I try to buy my way into being loved instead of just trusting that I already am. When my wife Diane left me 8 years ago for a man named Preston Cole, I didn't put up a fight. I know some of you watching are already shaking your heads at me, and you'd be right too. Preston runs 3 car dealerships across 2 counties, drives a Cadillac Escalade that costs more than my truck and trailer combined, and talks in that smooth, rehearsed way that makes you feel like you're being sold something even when he's just saying good morning. When Diane moved into his brick colonial out on Somerset Ridge, I let her keep the good furniture, the china, most of the savings. I told myself I just wanted my son Danny to have an easy landing. I didn't want him caught in the middle of 2 people who used to love each other, tearing each other apart over who got the silverware. So I stayed quiet. I worked harder. I kept paying for Danny's community college tuition even after the divorce was final, while Preston bought him a brand new Silverado for his 18th birthday and flew him out to Cancun for spring break. I thought if I just kept being patient, kept being the reliable one, eventually it would matter. I was wrong, my friend. I wasn't building a relationship. I was slowly writing myself out of my own son's life, one quiet sacrifice at a time. Monday, December 15th, 3:40 in the afternoon. The call came in while I was up on a ladder in a customer's garage in Millbrook, running conduit for a new subpanel, my breath fogging up in the cold air trapped inside that unheated space. My phone buzzed against my hip, and I saw Danny's name light up the screen. I climbed down, wiped my hands on my jeans, and answered it standing there in that cold garage with sawdust drifting in the light from the window. "Hey, bud," I said. "Perfect timing. I was just about to text you. I got that brisket you like smoking for Christmas Eve. Figured we'd do it just like always. Watch the game. Maybe get out the old sled if it snows." There was a pause on the other end, long enough that I actually pulled the phone away from my ear to check the call hadn't dropped. All I could hear was the hum of a car engine and, faintly, somebody else's voice in the background. "Dad," Danny said, and his voice had that flat, careful tone I'd learned to dread over the last few years. "So, listen, about Christmas Eve, I think we might need to change things up this year." "Change it how?" I asked, setting my drill down on the workbench. "We always do the brisket on Christmas Eve, Danny. Just the two of us. Then you head to your mom's for Christmas Day. We've done it that way since you were 15. "Yeah, I know," he said, and I could hear him shifting around, maybe walking through a parking lot. "But Preston's flying his whole family in this year. His brother and his nieces and everybody. And he's doing this big thing at the house. A whole formal dinner with a caterer and everything. Mom really wants us all together. Preston's trying so hard to make it feel like one big family." Those words landed on me like a dropped transformer, my friend. Trying to make it feel like one big family. I had been Danny's actual father for 23 years. I was the one who sat up 3 nights straight when he had pneumonia in the 6th grade, sponging his forehead with a cold washcloth because the fever wouldn't break. I was the one who taught him to drive stick in an empty church parking lot on a dozen freezing Sunday mornings because his mother was too nervous to do it. "Danny," I said, keeping my voice steady even though my chest had gone tight. "I already smoked the brisket rub. I bought the wood. I took the whole week off work for this. I haven't seen you since Thanksgiving. Dad, please don't make this a thing," he said. And I heard that edge come into his voice, the one that always made me back down. "It's one holiday. Preston went all out planning this. You can figure something else out this year, right? It's not that big a deal. Figure something else out." The line went dead before I even had a chance to answer him. He didn't say goodbye, didn't say Merry Christmas, nothing. Just hung up. I stood there in that cold garage for I don't know how long, listening to the wind rattle the aluminum door, feeling something cold settle into my chest that had nothing to do with the temperature. If you've ever felt that particular kind of cold, my friend, the cold of realizing you are completely replaceable to the people you built your whole life around, go ahead and hit that like button right now. It helps this story find the other fathers out there sitting in a cold garage somewhere, feeling exactly what I was feeling. Tuesday, December 16th, 6:15 in the evening. I couldn't sit in my own house on Birch Hollow Road that night, staring at that little pre-lit tree I'd put up out of pure habit more than anything else. So, I loaded up my truck with a couple of chainsaws, a come-along winch, some heavy tow chains, and drove the 4 miles out to Earl's place. When I pulled in, the sky had that heavy gray look that means snow is coming, whether the weatherman says so or not. Earl was out front of his silo house, wrestling a fallen oak limb into the bed of his old Bronco, breathing hard, favoring his left hip the way he does when the cold gets down into his bones. "You're moving slow tonight, Earl," I said, climbing out and pulling my work gloves on. Earl straightened up, wiped his forehead with the back of a patched sleeve, and gave me that dry, tired smile of his. "Cold gets into these old joints, Bobby. But Ruth Ann Delacroix out on Ferry Road is down to her last armful of firewood, and the radio's saying we've got a real system moving in tomorrow night. If she doesn't get wood before that hits, she'll be burning her porch furniture by Thursday." I didn't say a word. I just walked over, took that oak limb out of his hands like it weighed nothing, and heaved it into the truck bed. Then I grabbed my saw and started working through the deadfall scattered across his lot. We worked in silence for almost 2 hours, my friend. Just the sound of chainsaws and Earl stacking what I cut. He never once asked why a man would rather spend a Tuesday night in December splitting wood than sitting home getting ready for the holidays. When we finally stopped, Earl went to his Bronco and came back with a battered thermos, poured me a cup of coffee that tasted like it had been sitting on a wood stove since sunrise. "You look like a man who just got told he don't matter," Earl said quietly, looking out over the darkening field. I took a sip, Felt the heat of it in my chest. Danny called. Told me not to come for Christmas. Preston's flying and his whole family, doing this big production. And I guess there wasn't room on the guest list for the actual father. Earl nodded slow. Didn't offer me any easy comfort. Didn't tell me it'd all work itself out. He just looked down at his own busted-up hands. A man goes where he's needed, Bobby, not where he's tolerated. When my Linda passed, I thought that was the end of any reason to get up in the morning. Then I looked around this county and realized how many folks out here are one bad night away from freezing in their own subcombs. You've got a strong back, a good truck, and every tool a man could ask for. If your own family's got no room for you this year, I know about 30 households between here and Caldwell County that would be mighty grateful for your time. I looked at Earl, then down at the tow chains coiled in my truck bed, and something shifted in me, my friend. It wasn't anger, not exactly. It was more like a door quietly clicking shut somewhere deep inside my chest, a door I'd been holding open for 8 long years. "What time do we start tomorrow?" I asked. Earl looked at me with a little knowing glint in his eye. 5 in the morning. Bring the winch. Wednesday, December 17th, 5 in the morning. The system hit 2 days early, and it hit harder than anybody predicted. By Wednesday night, we had nearly 18 inches on the ground, and a coating of ice underneath it thick enough to snap power poles clean in half. Winds were gusting past 45 miles an hour, tearing down lines all across 3 counties. By Thursday morning, most of Caldwell County was dark. Temperatures dropped into the single digits. I never once looked at my phone, left it charging on the kitchen counter, and didn't touch it. I pulled on my Carhartt bibs, my insulated boots, my old reflective coat, and loaded the truck bed with diesel cans, 2 portable generators from my shop, cases of water, and every wool blanket I owned. For the better part of 2 days, my whole world shrank down to whatever my headlights could reach. Earl and I became a 2-man crew running on coffee and adrenaline. County plows were stuck fast on the main roads, but my truck had a plow rig and real 4-wheel drive under it. We cleared the drive at Caldwell Manor, the assisted living place on Route 9, after their backup generator seized up. I ran extension cords through a busted kitchen window myself, got their heating units back online before the pipes could freeze solid. We didn't eat anything those 2 days but cold sandwiches and Earl's burnt coffee. We hauled a fallen sycamore off Route 22 so an ambulance could get through to a man having a heart attack out past the county line. We delivered dry firewood to 11 different houses where old folks were huddled around fireplaces with nothing else keeping them alive. By the time Thursday night, Christmas Eve, rolled around, I was running on fumes, my face raw and chapped from the wind, my back screaming from hauling generators for 2 straight days. But my mind, my friend, my mind had never once been clearer. I wasn't thinking about Preston's caterer or his brother flying in from wherever. I wasn't thinking about Diane's brick colonial with the wreath on every window. I was just there, fully there, in the work. Right around 11:15 that night, a local news crew from Channel 9 that had been following emergency crews around the county got their van stuck hard in a drift at the corner of Route 22 and Ferry Road, right where the ditch drops off sharp. Earl and I pulled up behind them in the truck. I hooked the tow strap to their frame, dropped the truck into low gear, and pulled them out like they were nothing at all. A reporter came jogging over to my window, a young man named Kevin Ashworth, camera guy right on his heels, that red recording light glowing through the falling snow. "We are live on Channel 9, Kevin said into his mic, teeth chattering so hard I could hear it. "I'm standing here with 2 Caldwell County residents who've apparently spent the last 2 days single-handedly keeping half this county alive while the power grid is down. Sir, can I get your name? What's got you out here on Christmas Eve in conditions like this?" I rolled my window down. The cold hit my face clean and honest. "I wasn't playing to that camera, my friend. I want you to understand that. I was just looking at the man asking the question." "My name's Bobby Callahan," I said, my voice sounding rougher than I expected in the quiet after the wind died down a second. "And this here's Earl Whitfield. We're out here because people need us. A man's supposed to go where he's needed. When it gets cold like this, you don't hide inside worrying about yourself. You go find the people who've got nobody else coming for them." Kevin looked genuinely shaken by that. Bobby, dispatch just confirmed you two are the reason Caldwell Manor didn't have to evacuate 40-some residents into sub-zero temperatures last night. Do you have family waiting on you somewhere tonight? I let out a short breath that turned white in the cold air. My family made other arrangements this year. They had a big dinner to get to, so I had the time free. Merry Christmas, everybody out there. Stay warm if you can. I rolled the window up, dropped the plow blade, and pulled back onto the road. We had 3 more houses on the list before midnight. Friday, December 19th, 12:40 in the morning. We finally made it back to Earl's place to park the equipment. He shook my hand at the door, grip stronger than you'd think for a man his age. "You did good work tonight, Bobby," he said quiet. "Go on home and get some sleep." When I walked into my own kitchen a little before 1 in the morning, the house was ice cold, but the power had just flickered back on. I peeled off my boots and my wet coat, left them by the door, and picked my phone up off the counter. The screen lit up bright in that dark kitchen. 41 missed calls, 26 of them from Danny, 9 from Diane, 6 from a number I didn't recognize, which I'd later find out was Preston's cell. Dozens of texts stacked up underneath. I hadn't even gotten one message open before the phone started buzzing again in my hand. Danny. I slid my thumb across the screen. "Dad?" His voice came through shaking, nothing at all like the flat, careful voice from that phone call 5 days earlier. He sounded small, scared, like a kid again. "Dad, oh my God, are you okay? Where are you right now?" "I'm home, Danny," I said, keeping my voice level. "Just walked in." "Dad, why were you on the news?" He stammered, and I could hear commotion behind him. Diane's voice pitched high and frantic. Preston saying something loud and clipped that I couldn't quite make out. "We had the TV on for the weather, and there you were. They called you the Ferry Road Guardian, Dad. The county commissioner put out a statement thanking you and Earl by name." "Earl's a good man," I said simply. "We were just clearing roads." "But Dad," Danny said, and his voice cracked like he might cry. "You told that reporter your family had other plans. You said we didn't need you. Do you have any idea how that made us look?" Preston's phone hasn't stopped ringing. People from the dealership, people from the club, everybody's asking why his stepson's father is out there in a blizzard with a chainsaw, while Preston's got a caterer in the kitchen. They're saying it looks like we left you out there to freeze. I stood in that dark kitchen looking out at the snow piled against my old wooden fence, and the truth of it landed on me clean and sharp, my friend. He wasn't calling because he was scared for my safety. He was calling because of how it looked. Because Preston's reputation at the country club was on the line. "Danny," I said, and I didn't raise my voice one bit. "I didn't say you left me out to freeze. I told the man the truth. You called and told me not to come because Preston was flying his whole family in, and you wanted him to feel like one big happy family. You told me to figure something else out. So that's exactly what I did. You didn't have to say it on the news," he said, voice breaking. "Preston spent a fortune on this whole dinner, and now everybody's talking about how his family left his own father out in a storm. Mom's crying in the other room because her friends are texting her, asking what happened." "Then tell them the truth," I said quiet. "Tell them you chose to spend the holiday with the man who bought you a truck, and I chose to spend mine with the people who needed their power back on. There's no lie anywhere in that." "Dad, please," he whispered. And for the first time I heard something real crack through in his voice. Maybe fear, maybe something close to shame. Preston's generator failed a couple hours after the storm hit. A pipe burst in the basement, the whole lower levels flooding. It's freezing in the house. He won't let the neighbors come help because he doesn't want anybody seeing the mess, and he's furious. "Can you bring one of your generators over? Maybe hook up your plow? The driveway's blocked, and we can't even get a truck out." I sat down slow at my kitchen table, the wood cold under my hands. 8 years ago, even 2 weeks ago, I would have been in that truck before he finished the sentence. I would have plowed through every drift between here and Somerset Ridge just to earn one small nod of approval from my own son. I would have bought the peace one more time. But that man was gone, my friend. He'd died somewhere out on Route 22, hauling a sycamore trunk out of an ambulance's path. "No, Danny," I said. my voice as calm and even as the snow falling outside. "I can't do that." "What? Why not?" His voice climbed. "Dad, we're freezing over here. You've got the equipment sitting right there." "My equipment belongs to the relief line tonight," I said. "And Preston's a man who sells luxury vehicles for a living. I imagine he can figure something out." "That's what you told me to do, isn't it?" "Dad, how can you be this cold?" he said. "It's Christmas." "It is Christmas," I agreed. "And I just spent mine making sure 40 elderly people didn't freeze to death in their beds. I went where I was needed tonight. I am not needed at Preston's house. I'm only convenient there when the power goes out, Danny. And it took me 8 years to finally understand there's a real difference between those two things." "So, you're just leaving us here?" "Preston is your family now, Danny. You and your mother worked hard to make sure he felt like it. Let him take care of you tonight. I'm going to bed." I didn't wait around for an answer. I hit the red button on the screen, ended the call, turned the whole phone off, and set it face down on the counter before I walked back to my bedroom. Saturday, December 20th, 8:30 in the morning. The sun came up clean and blinding over the county, the kind of hard blue sky you only get after a storm scoured every bit of haze out of the air. I made a pot of real coffee, not Earl's burnt wood stove brew, and sat by the kitchen window a while. When I finally turned my phone back on, there were more messages, most of them from Diane calling me selfish. One long, rambling text from Danny that started like an apology and slowly turned into an explanation of why he'd had to stay at Preston's. I didn't answer any of them, my friend. I didn't feel angry, and I didn't feel any kind of triumph either. I just felt quiet. Clean, quiet space. Like a room after you've finally hauled out something heavy you'd been tripping over for years. Around 10, I drove the 4 miles out to Earl's place. Roads were mostly clear now, county plows finally catching up to the rest of us. When I pulled up to that old silo house, Earl was out on his porch in a folding lawn chair, wool blanket over his knees, watching the sunlight hit the snow. I carried a plate of that Christmas brisket up the steps and set it on the little table beside him. "Thought you might want some breakfast," I said. Earl looked down at the plate, then up at me, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "The Ferry Road Guardian brings brisket. Must be doing something right." "Don't start," I said, and I sat down on the top step, let the cold morning air settle on my face. We sat there a long while, my friend, not saying much of anything, just watching smoke curl up from a chimney down the road. And I realized something sitting on those steps that I want to leave you with tonight. A man's worth isn't measured by the family he was born into or the family that decided he was convenient to keep around. It's measured by his willingness to stand out in the cold when everybody else has run for the fire. I lost a son who only remembered me when the lights went out, but I found a whole stretch of county road that knew exactly who I was when things got dark. And for the first time in 8 years, my friend, that was enough. It was more than enough. Thank you for sitting with me through this one tonight. It means more than you know to have people out there who understand what it costs a man to finally stop begging for a seat at a table that was never really set for him. If this story reminded you of your own Christmas Eve, your own phone call, your own moment of finally walking away from people who only wanted you around when it was convenient, drop it in the comments below. I read every word. Hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you in the next one. Stay warm out there, stay steady, and remember, go where you're needed. Merry Christmas, and take care of each other.